Varnishes. Why would you varnish? How do you varnish? And the different types of varnish, and that's what we're going to talk about. So, there's water-based varnishes and solvent-based varnishes. We will talk about the water-based varnishes first, and I'll explain the differences between all of them. So probably the first two to kick off with the polyurethane varnishes. They're not acrylic, but they're based on a polyurethane. We have a satin and a gloss. I will mention at this point, all varnishes, all binders. So varnishes basically are just the binder, the glue bit, be it acrylic, polyurethane or whatever. Any sort of binder, including oils, including gum arabic, which is what's a binder in watercolour, are all glossy, relatively glossy. So as manufacturers, we add matting agents to take them from gloss down to satin or matte or semi-gloss or whatever you want to call it. So with the polyurethanes are very glossy. So we only make a gloss and a satin. We don't make a matte, because we have to add too much matting agent that you'll be able to see it. So when we see something that's gloss or glossy, that's basically just light hitting it, reflecting straight back and smacking us in the face. When we see something that's matte, light is hitting it and that's being dispersed or diffracted. And so therefore it has the appearance that it's matte, or at least it's less glossy than what the gloss is. So back to our polyurethanes. We have a gloss, we have a satin. We don't have a matte because we have to add too much matting agent because it's so glossy that you can actually start to see the haziness of matting agent. Why would you use these varnishes? You would use these varnishes, or any varnishes. Number one is the protection of what's underneath it, the painted surface, okay? With the polyurethanes, they have an added bonus as a varnish of being heat resistant. So for utility items like pot stands or coasters or placemats, where they might come into contact with quite hot plates or cups or that sort of thing, the polyurethanes are a hard, heat-resistant varnish. Now that does not mean you can put a pot or a casserole dish straight out of the oven at 400 degrees Celsius onto it, because that probably will stick to it. But anything else, certainly warm plates out of the oven or a hot cup of tea or something like that, the polyurethanes will manage that. Whereas the other varnishes may, especially if it's a really hot cup of tea, they might actually leave a little mark. So the polyurethanes are the best utility varnish. Moving along with the other water-based varnishes, the polymer gloss, matte and satin varnish. The polymer varnishes are an acrylic varnish. They're probably the most versatile, not just varnish, but medium. It's an archival glue. And what I mean by that, if you use PVA or other glues, you will find, especially with PVA, that they will go brittle over time and yellow. PVA are great wood glues, but that's when they're used in the middle of wood where they don't see any sunlight or any UV rays and they don't get much oxygen, obviously. They work really well there. But to actually adhere something to canvas, paper to paper, that sort of thing, the acrylic varnishes or acrylic mediums are far superior, have a much longer life, won't yellow. For any sort of glue-based project you have, the polymer gloss. And indeed, if you're gluing paper to paper, maybe try the polymer matte varnish, because you won't get the sheen that obviously you will with the gloss. The polymer varnishes are also used as a size and adhesive for gold leaf. They can be used over the top of a painted surface as an isolation coat. They can be used for photo image transfer. We have videos on all of these things. Probably, as I say, the most versatile of the mediums are the polymer varnishes, gloss, matte or satin. Like with the polyurethanes, the matte and the satin are just the gloss with matting agent added into it. Another point to mention with the polymer varnishes is you can finish off your work with the polymer varnish, basically use it as a final finish, but you can then paint over the top if you so desire. If you want to go back and change an area, and then you can put another coat of polymer varnish over the top of the whole thing again to even the sheen all the way across. And that, at the end of the day, is one of the other major points of what these varnishes, any of the varnishes do, is they even the sheen across the whole work. Now, before we move on to the solvent-based varnishes, I will mention the self-leveling medium. Now, this is a medium, you can mix paint with it. Indeed, you can mix paint in with the water-based polymer varnishes as well. But it is a very thick, basically it's in the same camp as the varnishes. It's a very thick, almost pouring medium, or it is a pouring medium, where you can pour it to get a really thick coat of varnish over the top of the work. So as far as cleanup goes with the water-based varnishes, just soap and warm water will take it out of your brushes and off your hands while it's still wet. Once it's dry, it's not really coming off. Last, but certainly not least, are the solvent-based or terps-based varnishes. Now, these are still acrylic, but unlike these water-based acrylic, the acrylic is dissolved in the terps. It's only dispersed in the water, dissolved in the terps. I won't bore you with all the details, but what that does mean is the terps-based varnish used in conjunction with the water-based varnish, so water-based varnish on first, basically as an isolation coat, leave it to dry obviously, and then the terps-based varnish over the top. The water-based varnish tend to dry with small, tiny capillary holes, but that will allow water and grime out of the air to enter back into the varnish. It won't change the varnish, but it can get grime, for instance, and get trapped in those tiny, tiny little holes. The terps-based varnish dries differently. Because the acrylic is dissolved in the terps, it does not dry with those tiny capillary holes. In fact, it dries a completely inert coating that nothing will permeate, not even oxygen. And that's relevant for oil paints, which we'll talk about in a second. The copybook way of finishing off a work, of an acrylic work, is with the water-based varnish, then the solvent-based varnish over the top. As before, the solvent-based varnishes come in a gloss, a matte, and a satin in between. I will mention that with the satin and the matte, in the terps-based varnishes, you must stir them, don't shake them, like James Bond, stir them with a clean stick, and make sure you get the matting agent off the bottom. It's clear, you won't be able to see it, but it's like gummy bears, and it falls out of solution quite quickly. So you must stir that back in. Otherwise, you're going to end up basically with a gloss varnish. All the matting agent has fallen out of solution. Okay. We said before that you wash everything up. All the water-based varnishes wash up in water. You must wash your brushes and any utensils in terps. That's the only way you can clean the terps off. What the end result will be with the water-based varnish down first and the terps base over the top is a completely enclosed system that will protect your work as long as you are going to be able to. With oil paints, you can use just the terps-based varnish over the top. Mind you, the oil paints should be dry for at least 6 months to make sure they are completely oxidised. The terps-based varnish over the top of the oils, though, it stops any more oxidation, which means it stops any cracking happening down the track. And lastly, in the terps-based varnish, we have a UV conservation varnish. So this varnish will stop basically all UV light getting through to the work underneath it. Now, for our paints, the Matisse paints, we don't need that because they're all light, fast colours. But if you're working with mixed media or printed media where you're a bit suspicious about the archival qualities of the printed matter or whatever it is you're going over, this varnish will, at the very least, stop UV light. So it won't stop all light, obviously, so it won't stop all fading, but it will certainly help to slow the fading down by reducing the UV light out of the equation. We can't see UV light, so it's no use to us, but it will stop all UV light and so therefore slow the fading process. Now, as far as toxicity goes, obviously the terps-based varnishes in the can have terps in them, so they are toxic. And when you're applying them, that terps will be evaporating off. So make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. The water-based varnishes, on the other hand, are non-toxic. Using them, there should be no problems. Wouldn't advise drinking them. That wouldn't, as we said, they're binders, so they will start to bind you up. But once they're dry, they're basically leaving behind a plastic coating. So as far as contact with food and that sort of thing goes, there shouldn't be any issues once all of these are dry. Eating little bits of the plastic that come off it, I don't know if you were chewing on something, I'm not sure why you would do that, but if something like that happened, it is just, as we've said, it's basically just plastic. So not great for you to eat, but there's no heavy metals or nasty reactive sort of compounds within any of these varnishes once they're dry. So that's a brief overview of all the varnishes. There are a lot more to them. You can read more about them on our website, and there are more detailed videos of several of the things that we have mentioned.